Welcome to the deep dive. If you ask almost anyone to name, a real American agricultural hero, George Washington Carver's name usually pops right up.
Absolutely. Peanuts, science, Tuskegee Institute, that's what comes to mind.
Right. But what often gets glossed over is the incredible struggle, the sheer relentless rejection he faced before he became that famous figure.
We celebrate the revolution he led, in the fields, but maybe we miss the revolution he had to stage just to get into the classroom in the first place.
Yeah, the success later on kind of overshadows how tough those early battles were against, systemic racism, really.
Definitely.
So let's start this deep dive with a moment that really captures that early struggle. A setback that honestly could have just destroyed his future right there. Get this. It's the late 1880s.
Okay.
This young man, George Carver, is just driven by this incredible hunger for education. He finally gets a letter, acceptance. Highland University in Kansas.
So a moment of triumph, finally.
Huge triumph. He saved his money, he's traveled, he shows up, full of hope, ready to learn.
And then?
Well, he had everything needed on paper, but when the administration saw him in person, they saw he was black.
Oh, no.
And just like that, the excitement, the acceptance gone. They told him point blank the offer was rescinded because he was black.
Wow, that's devastating. The door just slammed shut.
Exactly. Not because he wasn't capable, but because of who he was. That's soul-crushing for most people. That's probably the end of that dream. You'd just stop trying, wouldn't you?
You might. It would be completely understandable.
But not Carver. He looked at that failure, that absolute barrenness of opportunity right then, and he made this decision. He didn't give up the dream. He just decided to, quote, replant it somewhere else.
That's incredible resilience right there. Replant it.
And that's really the heart of our deep delve today. We're looking into the life of George Washington Carver, sometimes called the mystic of the soil. How did this philosophy of relentless perseverance and real humility let him turn that personal rejection and later the literal barren soil of the South into a national revolution?
Our sources really trace that journey from, captivity and loss right at the start all the way to global influence. And they focus heavily on his pretty radical philosophy of service and his connection to nature.
So to really get the power of that decision to replant, we need to start right at the beginning. His life began deep in struggle, didn't it?
Immense struggle and uncertainty. He was born into slavery around 1864, right in the middle of the Civil War's chaos in Diamond, Missouri.
And tragedy struck immediately. His mother, Mary, she was kidnapped by slave raiders when he was just an infant.
Never saw her again.
Never. So his life started with this profound, immediate loss. Our sources really emphasize that his foundation wasn't comfort, it was captivity, loss, and uncertainty.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if that instability maybe created this intense inner drive, this need to find order and knowledge in the world around him.
Makes sense. He was raised by Moses and Susan Carver, his former owners, who let him stay after emancipation. He was apparently quite frail, sickly as a child, couldn't do the heavy farm work.
Right. So he turned his attention elsewhere, to the woods, the plants. He spent hours just observing, tending to local flora, became known as the plant doctor locally.
Helping neighbors with their gardens, figuring out what was wrong with plants. He was basically learning science before he ever set foot in a proper school.
And getting into a school. That was another battle. Just like Highland University later, the nearby white school closed to him.
So he walked miles, sometimes daily, to the nearest school that would accept black children. Just think about that commitment for a second.
Every step was a kind of rebellion, wasn't it? A rejection of the idea that his mind didn't matter. Each lesson was like planting a seed.
And it's out of this early connection to the earth, this quest for knowledge against all odds, that his guiding philosophy comes from, his creed. Anything will give up its secrets if you love it enough.
It's such a powerful statement. And it wasn't just about plants or peanuts, was it? It was about resilience, about life itself.
That creed must have been his anchor during what we're calling the long walk to knowledge. Years of moving around, chasing education, scraping by.
Total rootlessness for a while.
Yeah.
Moving from town to town, doing odd jobs, laundry, cooking, farm work, whatever he could find to earn a few pennies.
All to save up for schooling, only to face rejection after rejection. Highland was the most painful, but it wasn't the only one.
No, he was turned away many times. But the key thing is, he never let that external judgment stop his internal preparation. He kept learning, kept saving.
And eventually that preparation did pay off. After years of searching, years of saving, he finally found a place, Iowa State Agricultural College.
And this wasn't just about getting an education for himself. It was a breakthrough, really, on a societal level.
Totally. At Iowa State, his talent finally started breaking through those racial barriers. He excelled, not just in botany, but also in art. He became the first black student there.
And then, incredibly, the first black faculty member at the university.
Yeah. His unique way of understanding the plant world, that almost spiritual connection he had, it wasn't just undeniable, it was actually revolutionary for the time. He truly believed the soil could heal communities.
And that belief, that conviction, is what took him south. In 1896, Booker T. Washington invited him.
The famous invitation to lead the agricultural department at the brand new Tuskegee Institute in Alabama.
Right. And this is where his personal journey really connects with this huge national need for service.
Because the challenge waiting for him there was just enormous, wasn't it? The South was in bad shape.
Ecologically and economically. Decades of just planting cotton had literally sucked the life out of the soil. Cotton is incredibly demanding, especially on nitrogen.
And that farming practice, that monoculture, it trapped farmers, especially the newly freed black tenant farmers, in this awful cycle.
A devastating cycle of poverty and debt. They had to plant cotton to try and pay off last year's loans, but that just depleted the soil even more, meaning smaller harvests next year, meaning more debt. It was vicious.
So Carver shows up, looks at this devastation, this literal barren land, and somehow sees potential.
And the solution was, well, brilliant, but also simple. Crop rotation. You have to alternate crops to put nitrogen back into the soil.
He championed these overlooked heroes, peanuts, sweet potatoes, and soybeans. Nitrogen fixers.
Exactly. But there was a problem. Most farmers resisted at first. Why? Because those crops didn't have much commercial value back then beyond just basic food for the family.
Right. Why grow something you can't really sell?
So Carver knew he had a second job.
Yeah.
Prove their economic value. And that necessity, that practical problem, is what unleashed his real genius, applying science to create actual market value.
And this is where the legend just explodes, isn't it? The peanuts. He didn't just say grow peanuts. He completely reinvented what a peanut could be, developed over 300 uses.
300. And we're not just talking about peanut butter, though that was one. He was focused on industrial uses that could generate real income.
Things like?
Think cooking oils, cosmetics, ink, dyes for printing, even things like synthetic rubber, all from the humble peanut.
Wow. So for a local farmer, this meant real diversification, right? If you could use peanut oil, you grew yourself for cooking, or make a simple cosmetic to sell locally.
Suddenly, you have an income stream that's not tied to the totally unpredictable global cotton market. It was revolutionary.
And he did similar things with sweet potatoes too, right? Like paving materials,
Yeah.
gasoline substitutes.
Wood stains, all sorts. His goal wasn't just scientific curiosity, though he clearly had that. It was economic independence for the people who needed it most. He was using botany as a tool for, well, radical social uplift.
Which brings us to what I think is maybe the most fascinating part of his story. The choice he made about wealth, about fortune.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. He becomes this globally recognized expert, right? An innovation powerhouse. He could easily have been one of the wealthiest men of his time.
So was this focus on giving away his work like a practical thing, maybe avoiding patent hassles? Or was it truly this deep moral commitment we read about? I mean, how do you turn down that kind of money?
All the sources point to it being a deeply moral, almost spiritual choice. He famously refused to patent most of his hundreds of discoveries.
Why? What was his reasoning?
He saw his scientific insights as gifts, divine inspiration. He literally said they were gifts from God meant to be shared freely, service over personal wealth. That was his priority.
And we know he turned down that huge job offer from Thomas Edison, right? One of the richest, most powerful men in the world.
He did, specifically to stay at Tuskegee. He chose the harder path, the path of serving those communities who needed him most, over the comfort and prestige of working with Edison.
He talked about his scientific work in this almost mystical way too, didn't he?
Yeah, he said something like, "I love to think of nature as an unlimited broadcasting station, through which God speaks to us every hour, if we only tune in." For him, the lab wasn't just about chemistry, it was a spiritual place for discovery.
That commitment to service over self, it must have given him incredible moral authority, even on the national stage.
Absolutely. Which brings us back full circle in a way to that shock fact from the beginning. The man denied admission to college because of race gets this ultimate vindication in 1921.
Before the U.S. Congress?
The House Ways and Means Committee, no less.
Yeah.
He was called to argue for a tariff to protect the growing peanut industry. At first, apparently, some congressmen mocked him, gave him only 10 minutes, treated him like a sort of novelty act.
And what happened?
He didn't just talk theory, he brought his inventions, showed them the peanut plastics, the oils, the dyes. He demonstrated the value locked inside that little seed.
And he completely captivated them.
Totally. They kept extending his time. He ended up speaking for nearly 2 hours, turned what was meant to be this brief, maybe dismissive appearance into a masterclass on applied science and economic potential.
And he got a standing ovation from the nation's leaders.
The very definition of vindication, right? The man once rejected by a small college was now lecturing the powerful on how to run the economy.
It's an incredible arc. That journey from rejection to that standing ovation really sums up his whole philosophy. But we should add some nuance here. He wasn't universally loved during his lifetime, was he?
No, absolutely not. He occupied what's often called the uncomfortable middle. On one hand, many white communities dismissed him simply because of his race. On the other hand,
He faced criticism from some black intellectuals, too. People who maybe preferred W.E.B. Du Bois's approach, more direct political confrontation, focusing on civil rights immediately.
right, that tension often stemmed from his close association with Booker T. Washington's ideology.
Right.
Washington's accommodationist philosophy emphasized economic self-sufficiency and practical skills first, believing political and social rights would follow.
So Carver chose that path, practical empowerment over immediate political fights.
Essentially, yes. His focus was always laser-sharp on the immediate needs of the poor farmer. How can I help this person right now become more prosperous? He seemed to believe economic strength would eventually provide the foundation for political gains. His guiding principle never wavered. It is not the style of clothes one wears, but the service that counts.
When you step back and look at the whole picture, the entire story of George Washington Carver, it really is perfectly symbolized by the peanut itself, isn't
It
it?
really is. The peanut is small, it's humble, it grows mostly unseen, underground. It was overlooked for so long.
Just like Carver himself, in many ways, for much of his life.
Exactly. Yet it holds this incredible power to restore nitrogen to the soil, to nourish people, and as he showed, to yield this abundance of life-changing products. It mirrors his journey. Underestimated, born into the hardest circumstances, but rising up to nourish and revitalize an entire region.
He passed away in 1943, and the epitaph on his grave, it captures that core moral choice so perfectly.
What does it say?
It reads, "He could have added fortune to fame, but caring for neither, he found happiness and honor in being helpful to the world."
Wow. Caring for neither. That says it all.
It really does.
So what Carver teaches us today, I think, is that innovation isn't always about inventing some flashy new gadget. Often it's about seeing old things, like a humble seed or a patch of tired soil with completely new eyes.
His success wasn't built on privilege. It was built on this radical perseverance and a different way of seeing.
He didn't just change farming, he challenged America to rethink what potential even means, to see barrenness not as an end, but as a beginning. He showed us that the biggest contributions often come from nurturing what others have discarded.
Which brings us to a final, powerful question for you, the listener, to think about. Carver faced the worst conditions you can imagine. He didn't wait for the perfect lab, the perfect university, the ideal political climate. He just used the tools he had right where he was.
So he kind of asks us, doesn't he? What are you doing with the seeds you've been given? It doesn't matter if your soil looks barren right now. What soil are you cultivating today?
You don't need perfect conditions to start. You just need the courage to nurture what you have right now.